So we're going to continue on Unit 2, Lesson 5, and here we're going to go to the subtitle for cyclic hydrocarbons. Cyclic hydrocarbons. Hydrocarbons. Okay. So what is cyclohydrocarbons? Yeah, it is a hydrocarbon that creates cycles. That's it. For example, I'm going to take an example. I'm going to erase everything here. I'm going to take an example of a hydrocycle. We said that the carbons must have 4 legs. So I'm going to write here example. So sometimes a carbons, for example, 3 carbons can bound like that. A carbon here, a carbon here. They have the right. Instead of being in linear chain, sometimes they bound like that. Once they bound like that, we call it a cyclic. Why? Because they form a loop. They form a cycle. So this carbon here has 2 legs, so he needs 2 hydrogens, one here and one here. This carbon also has 2 legs, so he needs a hydrogen here and a hydrogen here. This one has also hydrogen and hydrogen here. So what we are going to name this one, we're going to name it cyclopropane, because it has 3 carbons, and 3 carbons, it does mean propane. But because they form cycle, we call it cyclopropane. We add the cyclopropane. Another example. I'm going to erase everything here. Say I have 4 carbons. I have 4 carbons, and they want to talk. So example 2, like that. So maybe 4 carbons, they can loop like this one here. And this one needs 2 hydrogens. This one also needs 2 hydrogens. This one needs 2 hydrogens. This one here needs 2 hydrogens. So how going to call this one? Because we have 4, so it will be chain. And since it is a cycle, we're going to call it cyclobutane. Cyclobutane. Good. There are another rule now that we're going to speak about. Now we know that the hydrocarbons are full of carbons, are made of carbons and hydrogen. So chemists said we know that there is carbons and there is hydrogens. So why we are going to keep writing carbon and hydrogen? We know. For example, I'm going to give you an example. Say I have 5 carbons. Carbon here, carbon here, carbon here, carbon here, carbon here, and carbon here. So this one here again, it needs 2 hydrogens. This one we need 2 hydrogens, 2 hydrogens, hydrogen here, hydrogen here, hydrogen here, etc. like this one. So the chemist, what they said, what we're going to represent, we're going to represent it only the bounding, and we're going to represent it now like that. And we have vertices. When you see a vertex here, for example, you know it is a carbon. And you know if this carbon here needs 2 hydrogens. So right now we're going to represent all the hydrocarbons without writing the carbons or the hydrogens, especially for the cycle. This one, for example, it is the same as this one. They are equivalent. Okay, we miss the carbon and we miss the hydrogens because we know that they are there. Okay, so what we're going to call this one? We're going to call it cyclopentane. Okay, so now we're going to go to more complicated situations when we have a side chains. So right here, side chains, yeah, cyclic, yeah, cyclic alkenes with side chain. when we have side chain, what we are going to do, the naming, it is the same as we did. For example, we're going to take an example. I have here a triangle. Remember, a triangle here, that's what does it mean, the vertices here? It means it is the are carbons, and with the carbons, you have to put a number of hydrogens needed. And I have here, for example, CH3. So what are we going to name this one here? We're going to name it, first we have to label carbons. I'm going to label this carbon 1, 2, 3. We label always that we will have the smallest number for the side chains. And what we're going to call it, 1 methyl. And because I have a cycle with 3 carbons, and 3 carbons, it is what? Propane. 3 carbons, and in the cycle it will be cyclopropane. Cyclopropane. So this one, it will be 1 methyl cyclopropane. 1 methyl cyclopropane. Cyclopropane. And because here there is no confusion, we miss this one here. The one that we have here, we don't have to put it. Why? Because we know that it will be in first. So we call it only methyl cyclopropane. Another example now. Say I have this one. 5 carbons, a pentagon. And say I have this one here, CH2, CH3. And I have one here, CH3. So I'm going to name it. First, I'm going to circle the side chains. Yeah. And I have a cycle here. What is this cycle here? Because I have 5 carbons, it will be cyclopropane, pentane, cyclopentane, because it is pentagon. And now we have to label the carbons. This one, it is a methyl, and this one, it is the ethyl. And now we have to label the carbons. We label always the carbons that we have the smallest numbers for the side chains. For example, I'm going to label this one 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now the same names. I have to start by the ethyl. Ethyl. Why? Because it is in alphabetic order. E come before the M. So it will be 1 ethyl. And I have the methyl in the 3 methyl cyclopentane. Cyclopentane. And this is the name, the right name here. Here we are going to keep the 1 here because we have to say that the ethyl must be in the first carbon. Good. Now we're going to speak about aromatics. I'm going to stop here. I'm going to do another video. This is for the cycles. Good. Bye.